going on, everybody? Hope y'all are doing marvelous as always. Finally, we have reached the last part of the micronutrient series. This is part 4, which is our trace minerals. Now, I don't really have much background information to go over with this. We have a lot of minerals to cover. There's about 9 in total, which is more than all the vitamins and minerals we've went over so far. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. I want to start with iron, right? Now, iron's probably the one that majority of us know the most of. The roles of iron is to transport oxygen from our lungs to our tissues, okay? And it does so, of course, using red blood cells, which is, that's what makes up hemoglobin. The other is myoglobin, which is our muscle cells. Now, red blood cells have about a 4-month lifespan, and what happens at that 4 months is our liver and our spleen prepares it for degradation, right? So it degrades it and then just kind of either excretes it or recycles it. Now, the one thing about trace minerals is that they don't really get excreted. Our body sort of just holds it until, it's time to absorb some more due to a deficiency or a depletion of some sort. So now what happens during the recycling process is that our liver will, send iron over to our bone marrow, and from there the iron will get duplicated, right? It'll get multiplied. Now, if you'll notice, for all of these trace minerals, there are no deficiency diseases, so we'll be skipping that column all the way down. Over to the symptoms, though. So for iron symptoms, right, deficiency symptoms, you'll be looking at iron deficiency anemia. Now, with that comes headaches, fatigues, weakness. You could be looking at pale skin and inability to regulate body temperature, and the list kind of goes on. Now, I do want to speak about iron deficiency anemia. There's a difference between being iron deficient and having iron deficiency anemia. You could be deficient in iron and not actually have anemia. Iron deficiency anemia basically is where it's the condition where our red blood cells tend to get so, small and pale. And the reason why that's a problem is because if they're small and pale, as mentioned over here in the roles, the iron is not, the red blood cell specifically, doesn't have the capacity to be able to transport oxygen from our lungs to our tissues, right? It's not as effective as it should be in our bodies. So that's why iron deficiency anemia is a problem. Now, iron deficiency anemia is also, it's usually experienced by 3 different types of people, or 3 different groups of people, I should say. Those groups being infants or toddlers, right? Adolescent teenage girls, and of course women, especially women who are in their pregnancy stages. So what can happen with adolescent teenage girls and women that are, in their pregnancy years, and I'm going to kind of skip a little bit over to the recommendations. You'll notice that for women, right, from between the ages of 19 to 50, women are expected to get 18 milligrams per day of iron. That's about 10 milligrams more than men. And the reason for that, of course, is because with women, there are different things that, women experience that, of course, we as men don't. For example, periods, right? Menstruation cycles. During those cycles, women tend to lose a lot of blood, and through loss of blood means loss of iron, right? Loss of red blood cells that need to be replicated. So, pregnant women, same thing, right? When women are pregnant, right, they have a whole fetus growing, right? And what that means is, for iron, the iron, it tends to get shared in order to develop the fetus the way that it should be at its maximum effort, so, or to the maximum effect. So of course, now with iron being shared, right, that of course means pregnant women need to sort of increase their volume just a little bit, so that way they have iron for their pregnant fetus as it develops into a baby, and for themselves. So the other deficiency symptom is what's called pica. Now, pica is not really experienced here in the United States. It's more experienced in developing nations where, and it's also more common among women and children of low-income areas. So what pica is basically the craving of items that are not really conducive to the human body. I wrote here in parentheses, I got a couple of examples, like chalk, and yes, I mean chalk that you use to write on a chalkboard with. Paper, ash, grass, that's the craving of things that are not really conducive to the human body. They're not really food. Now, when I was in school for this certificate program, I did see, it was one of my first classes. We had to pick a video to watch, and we had to do a discussion board on that topic. And so One of the videos I remember watching was pica. One of the countries that pica is experienced by is Syria. Now, oftentimes when countries get into war, one of the strategies, right, one of the tactics to surviving a war, or to winning it, I should say, is starving out the people, famine, okay? And with famine, especially in Syria, what I found in that video that I had to watch was, kids, specifically, of course, women were the ones that were affected too, but kids, you'd see, you'd hear them talk about like kids having to eat dogs that ran, down the street, in addition to grass and whatnot. So it was one of the more, disappointing and sort of disheartening things to see. But of course, to teach a subject like this, you kind of got to get exposed to the good, bad, and the ugly. Maybe I'll link that in this video, for anyone who may be interested in going to watch it. But that's where pica comes in. It's more so in developing nations and not so much here. Now, toxicity symptoms of iron, you could be looking at gastrointestinal distress, okay? And also, you could be looking at free radical damage to tissues. Now, if you remember, free radicals are basically unstable molecules that attack the body, right? That's where antioxidants normally come into play. They protect our bodies against free radicals. But a toxicity of iron can allow for bacterial infections and viruses and diseases to, plague us, because bacterial infections and viruses, they tend to thrive on iron-rich environments, right? They thrive on iron-rich blood. So that's why toxicity is a bad thing here with iron, in a sense. And last but not least, if toxicity continues, you could eventually be looking at liver failure and heart failure. Recommendations, I kind of already touched on it a little bit. Men is 8 milligrams. Women who are 19 through 50 get 18 milligrams per day. And women who are 51 and up, that number decreases down to 8 milligrams per day, because as women get older, you stop having periods and things like that, you go through menopause, iron is not really a, commodity for you, I guess is the right term to use here. Iron is not really as essential in those ages as they used to be. Now, the upper limit is 45 milligrams. Sources of iron, they come in abundance of meat, fish, poultry, shellfish, eggs, and legumes. In parentheses, I don't know if you can see it, I have DF. I kind of had to write it over here. It basically stands for dried fruits, right? So dried fruit specifically is where you can get iron from. Our next mineral is zinc. Now, zinc is a mineral that's a part of many enzymes. So the roles of zinc is it will secrete, store, release, and signal the hormone insulin. It's also essential in gene expression, which then in turn helps promote immune function. It also aids in vitamin A transport, taste perception, wound healing, okay? And for men, very important, it also is essential in sperm production, okay? So it is good for reproductive health. Now, skipping over the deficiency symptoms, you could be looking at, an impaired immune response. Specifically, what is common in deficiency of zinc tends to be pneumonia and GI tract issues. It has a direct relationship with vitamin A, so because of that, what you could be looking at is impaired vision as well. Well, if you remember from the fat soluble vitamins video, vitamin A is essential in vision, right? It's essential in good vision. And because of that direct relationship, as you can imagine, deficiency of zinc can equal to a deficiency of vitamin A, right? When you get one, you can happen to get the other. So you also can be looking at stunted growth, which is known as one of the primary deficiency symptoms, right? Zinc is necessary for growth because, again, zinc is important, it's essential in gene expression, right? DNA structure. And also it can alter your taste, appetite, and your ability to heal wounds. Now, the recommendations for zinc is 11 milligrams for men, 8 milligrams for women. Upper limit is 40 milligrams, and zinc comes from protein-rich foods known as red meat, fish, shellfish, and even whole grains, right? So this one is pretty good for all, dieting types, whether you're a meat eater, carnivore, so to speak, or if you're a vegetarian, vegan, pescatarian, lacto-ovo, vegetarians or what have you, same thing. You can, if you don't eat meats of any kind or eat any kind of shellfish or anything like that, whole grains is pretty much universal among all dieting types. Now you have copper as our next mineral. Now, copper is involved in reactions that consume oxygen or oxygen radicals, right? So now it also is involved in iron metabolism to synthesize hemoglobin, all right? And it also acts as an antioxidant. It helps to form collagen, which, if you remember, is our connective tissue, and it can deactivate histamine. Now, over the deficiency symptoms, you'll be looking at anemia, okay? Because again, with anemia, that's basically lack of iron, right? You could have an iron deficiency there with copper as well. Lack of copper can lead you to lack of iron. You're looking at bone abnormalities. You could also be looking at Manganese disease, which is a rare genetic disorder, right? Manganese disease is basically where copper is, you have an influx of copper in the intestinal cells, right? Like your intestinal cells absorb copper, but it can't release it. With that comes a life-threatening deficiency. If your body can't release that copper, but it's holding so much of it. And with that can come poor muscle tone, seizures, and some brittle and kinky hair. Toxicity symptoms, now we're looking at liver damage as a possibility, and then you can be looking at Wilson's disease, right, which is also another rare genetic disorder, right? What that basically is your copper accumulates in the liver and in the brain. So that can create a life-threatening toxicity, because since it accumulates in your brain, it can affect your nervous system functions, which can lead you to tremors, impaired speech, or even personality changes and inappropriate behaviors. Recommendations for men and women are the same, 900 micrograms per day. The UL, right, the upper limit, is 10,000 micrograms. Sources: seafood, nuts, legumes, whole grains. Now we have manganese as our next one. Now manganese, it helps metabolize the macronutrients, right? It also assists in bone formation, and they basically reside in any metabolically active organs. So that would be our liver, kidneys, and our pancreas, right? Because they all sort of, metabolize, like the pancreas, it helps secrete insulin, right? And then of course liver and kidneys, they help with excretion and, filtering, things like that. Over the deficiency symptoms, deficiency in manganese is actually rare, but high doses of iron and calcium can actually inhibit the absorption of manganese. So you do want to be careful there. Toxicity though, environmental factors typically what leads you to manganese toxicity. Miners are good examples, right? So those that mine, okay, they tend to inhale manganese dust, which is pretty bad because they can end up with certain nervous system disorders, right? They can get brain disease. Recommendations for men: 2.3 milligrams, women 1.8 milligrams, the upper limit being 11. So now the sources, you get nuts, whole grains, leafy veggies, and even some tea, believe it or not. All right, so now the next mineral we're gonna go over is iodine, which may be one of the more common ones that people know about. But iodine is part of our thyroid hormone that helps regulate body temperature, metabolic rate, reproduction, growth, blood cell production, nervous muscle cells. The list does go on. Okay, iodine is important in a lot, which is going to lead me to the deficiency symptom, goiter. Okay, now what goiter is basically the enlargement of your thyroid gland, and there's a huge lump in your neck. That's usually one of the first deficiency symptoms that starts to display itself when you have goiter. Now basically, the way goiter works, right, is our thyroid gland, it tends to produce thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH for short. It's part of our body's pituitary function. Now, when there's a deficiency of iodine, our thyroid, or our body will essentially try to elevate TSH, right? It'll mass produce TSH in order to try to increase uptake of iodine. Now, if deficiency continues though, right? If deficiency just goes on and on, then what can happen is our thyroid will enlarge, right? The thyroid gland will enlarge, and then it'll try to trap whatever iodine is in your body. And that's where goiter comes into play. Now, something else I do want to talk about, and it's going to give us a reminder as to why everything should be in moderation, or everything in even balance, right? When it comes to our consumption of nutrients and minerals. There's this thing called goitrogens. I know it's a little small, but I wanted to talk about goitrogens, and what that is they exist in phytochemicals, okay? Certain vegetables, like, the leafy vegetables, broccoli, cabbage, kale, spinach, Brussels sprouts, Goitrogens can end up giving you goiter as well, right? They can enlarge your thyroid gland if you actually eat too much of those vegetables. I just want to, be mindful here. I don't want y'all to hear that and think, veggies are bad, right? Like, I don't want y'all to take away that from this. It's just a reminder that we have to make sure that we have an even balance of everything. Something else you could be looking at is cretinism in pregnant women. Now, basically what cretinism is it's a condition where the physical and mental development of a fetus turning into a baby is limited, right? It's inhibited in a sense. This usually happens with lack of iodine in pregnant women, right? Like in women during stages of pregnancy. Toxicity, you could be looking at elevated TSH levels, okay? So too much iodine, you're looking at an increase of thyroid stimulating hormone, and you don't want that either. Goiter can actually, believe it or not, exist in toxicity as well. Now, I wanted to highlight this. For pregnant women in gestation, right, what can happen is too much iodine can actually block the airways of your infant. For my pregnant women out there, or women who are looking to get pregnant, whenever this video hits you, it's important to remember that iodine is going to be one of your essential trace minerals during pregnancy, okay? But you also want to make sure you don't get too much either, all right? That's going to affect the development of your baby. Recommendations, men and women, 150 micrograms, and the upper limit is 1100 micrograms. Sources, we're looking at iodine salt and seafood. I mean, with iodine, typically, iodine salt is the easiest way to get that, okay? I do believe, I want to say Morton's is one of the most common brands of iodized sea salt. That's where you can get this from. Just a little teaspoon or whatever here or there. You can easily get that intake. Now we're looking at selenium as our next trace mineral. It's one of the body's antioxidants. It's part of the protein known as, it's kind of hard to say, glutathione peroxidase. And basically what that does is it works in tandem with vitamin E to help prevent free radicals. Because if you remember, vitamin E it's an antioxidant to help protect against free radicals and prevent them. Now, over the deficiency symptoms, you could be looking at Qishan disease. And basically Qishan disease is it's a province in China where this was first studied. But what happens during Qishan disease is enlargement of the heart, and your fibrous tissues end up replacing your muscle tissues that typically are used to compose the walls of the heart. Now, toxicity, you could be looking at loss or brittleness of hair and nails, sort of a garlic breath odor, and nervous system issues leading to fatigue and irritability. All right. Recommendations, men and women 55 micrograms, and the upper limit being 400 micrograms. Sources being seafood, meats, whole grains, fruits, and veggies. Now I have 3 asterisks by the veggies. I had to write it over here because of course I didn't have room, but veggies, it depends on the soil content. So like selenium lives in soil. So depending on how certain veggies have been cropped, right? This is where cropping and farming and whatnot come into play. Now you can still, it's been said by researchers that you can still get selenium out of crops that even don't have soil, because you tend to most likely eat something else that has selenium in it, be it seafoods, meats, or fruits, or whole grains, right? So the vegetables specifically, depending on the soil content and how they were farmed, how they were cropped, that determines, how much selenium you get out of veggies. Next we got fluoride. That may actually be another trace mineral that you all have heard of, but fluoride is necessary in bone and teeth mineralization in its early stages of formation, okay? It's specifically, fluoride is more found in teeth than bones, but you may find traces of it in bone as well. But yeah, it's necessary for teeth formation, especially in its early stages. So when a kid grows and their baby teeth come out, their adult teeth come in, fluoride's important to help mineralize those teeth and make them strong. Which leads me to the next bullet here. What happens with fluoride, where it comes into play for making strong teeth, is calcium and phosphorus, right? 2 major minerals. They form this crystal called hydroxyapatite, right? Now fluoride replaces the hydroxyl component of that and makes fluorapatite, okay? And what that does, fluorapatite is what's used to prevent teeth from decaying, okay? And of course, as you can imagine, deficiency symptoms, Most common one is dental caries, right? Tooth decay. So it's been said that 95% of the population experience either decayed, missing, or filled teeth, which is kind of crazy to think about. 95% of the population maybe have a certain amount of crowns, veneers even, right? Because that's an example of filled teeth. So are crowns, and so are bridges. You know, bridges usually take care of teeth that are missing. Same thing with crowns too. Fluorosis is a toxicity symptom. Now, if you get too much fluoride, you could be looking at discoloration and pitting of the teeth. Now, this is also why we've been told as kids not to swallow toothpaste or mouthwash, because you know this fluoride typically tends to exist in both, and so if you swallow it, that's an easy way to for it to become toxic. Recommendations: men 4 milligrams, women 3 milligrams. So the milligrams aren't that high, right? You don't need that much fluoride. And the upper limit, you're looking at 10 milligrams. Sources: drinking water that has fluoride in it, right? And then you're looking at some tea and some seafood, believe it or not. Specifically, the type of seafood you'll find fluoride in is fish. Now we got chromium. Now chromium is it's a pretty simple one. The only real thing it does is it enhances insulin activity. So it promotes the hormone insulin and helps it out with its activity. And it may also prevent or improve rather glucose tolerance, preventing glucose intolerance. Now, deficiency symptoms though, you could be looking at diabetes-like conditions. So when you're not getting enough chromium in, you look at elevated blood glucose, you look at impaired glucose tolerance, as well as impaired insulin response. Now, it's important to note though that supplements have found to have little to no effect on if you have glucose intolerance. Get your minerals from food first. Supplements really should be a last resort. For men, 35 micrograms, and for women, you're looking at about 25 micrograms. There isn't a toxicity with that, I forgot to say. And because there's no toxicity, there's no upper limit. Sources though, meats, specifically liver, that's what I have over there in parentheses. I'm not really a fan of eating liver, but some of you may be, so no smoke to you. I just, for me, yeah, I don't know about that one. But whole grains and brewer's yeast. Those are the other two sources you can get chromium from. Now finally, we are at our last one, molybdenum. That's more of a simple mineral, and as you can see, there's not a whole lot really to go with it. Molybdenum just simply acts as a cofactor in various enzymes. And when I say various, I mean like various enzymes. I mean nothing too specific. No deficiency disease, no symptoms are known, okay? Toxicity, nothing there. And same thing with upper limit, nothing there. Recommendation though, 45 micrograms. That's for both men and women. And now, the sources you can get these from is legumes, grains, and nuts. And that will conclude our micronutrient series. I know it was a long one. I mean, I kind of just was, as I was putting this together, having to wash away the board and things like that and keep the lines in and draw more lines because there was a certain number of vitamins and minerals I had to put info for. It was a tough one, but we got through it. If you're here with me still, then I really appreciate it. But the only real takeaway I got for you for this one is, just remember, even balance with everything. Everything in moderation, right? You don't want to get too much of anything, and then you don't want to be deficient in anything either. The iodine part, I do want to say, just my own personal experience that I want to share with you before I go. The TSH levels, right? My last annual appointment with my doctor, I had elevated TSH levels actually. I had no idea what the hell TSH even was. And when I asked my doctor about it, the only thing he just said was to, do more cardio, right? Was just to increase my cardio, which is oftentimes what he tells me whenever I have high cholesterol or I have high blood pressure, is to try to increase my heart rate to, help get some of the levels down. I guess TSH was no different, but I actually had to go home and look that one up myself. I had no idea what TSH was. The doctor wouldn't explain it to me. So luckily, thankfully, through this, I was able to finally understand what TSH is. Now, I can't say that lack of iodine was the reason my TSH levels were elevated. I'm not sure. Again, doctor didn't really share that with me, so I kind of had to just do my own thing there, do my own research and take another look at my dieting and what I'm eating and make sure that iodine was definitely, in my diet. Now, I guess we'll see what happens when I go for my next checkup, which actually is within the next month. So we'll see what happens there. Hopefully my TSH levels go down a little bit, because again, TSH, that's our thyroid gland. Thyroid issues are more frequent than you might think. Not sure what my next video is going to be yet. I'm deciding between either high cholesterol or diabetes. Not really sure which one I'm going to tackle yet. If you liked it, feel free to give it a like, comment, and even subscribe if you feel inclined. If you got any questions, comments, or concerns, make sure to hit my comment section, because I do check them periodically. And this has been the Micronutrient series, y'all. Thank you very much, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Y'all take care.